Tell us about this thing coming up where Colorado's looking to get rid of some over-the-counter tags, or you kind of mentioned that to me in passing before. So
Yeah, so it's kind of up in the air, but they just had one of their meetings where they like release what their plan is and stuff. And one of the things they mentioned was either massive decrease to the number of units and number of tags issued, or getting rid of over-the-counter archery elk altogether.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down. Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
all right, everybody, welcome back to another Fall Obsession Podcast episode. I'm Sam. I'm your host this week. Thanks for tuning in. Our podcast is driven by Ridge Rock Hunt Company, and I'll talk more about them at the conclusion in our sponsor segment. Tim Berges is my guest this week. He's our Fall Obsession Western Regional Staff Coordinator. Welcome back, Tim.
Hey, good to have you. Good to be here.
Glad to have you, man. So Tim is for our listeners who might be new to the Fall Obsession Podcast platform, Tim's from Colorado. As I mentioned, one of our regional coordinators, and very educated in kind of the Colorado parks, wildlife, fish realm, and the licensing and everything. You do your job and do your research every year. That's not what this podcast is about. We'll have more coming up later in the coming couple months as Colorado starts putting out some more of their draw applications and stuff like that and opening that stuff up. But a lot of good content in that regard in the past if listeners want to go back and dig those episodes up. So. But what we wanted to talk about, or kind of to kick off our conversation at least, Tim, you have a family farm up there in Colorado that you spend a majority of your hunting time, give or take, from season to season out on.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about specific instances where you've been out on that property and everything. The big buck that you killed a season or two ago was one podcast that we recorded. But I wanted to dive in and talk about the farm because you guys seem to have a pretty awesome little operation going out there, or some good hunting opportunities as it may seem. So obviously I'm not asking anybody ever to give away hunting locations or property locations specifically, but tell us about this piece that you guys get to hunt.
Okay. So yeah, it's northeast Colorado, basically right on the Nebraska border. The farmhouse is like literally a half a mile from the Nebraska state line, and most of our ground borders the Nebraska state line. So it's like, might as well be Nebraska, but it's not, which is kind of good, kind of bad, because Nebraska tags are a lot easier to get for deer. So
Yeah, I was gonna say.
one advantage. I would be shooting mule deer every year versus every 5 years. That's kind of the downside there. But I'd be paying non-resident $300-400 a piece versus like $40. So kind of a wish-wash. We'll see. I don't know. It's one of those things that different states have different rules, of course, and so it's like, well, they're hunting the same deer we are. This is, they walk across the road back and forth all the time, but
Yeah,
that's the way it works. It's mainly so for production we grow wheat. So we have about 2,500 acres total between wheat and CRP, and then we rotate our wheat, so about 700 acres one year and 900 acres the other in actual production. And so kind of how wheat works, just as you plant it in, at least here, it's different, of course, everywhere based on your conditions and whatever. But for us, we plant in September and harvest in July when it's ready, and just kind of go from there. The last 3 years, we've had a historically bad drought, like the worst ever.
yeah.
And so our wheat crop has not been good. And then, of course, all the pheasants have massively decreased because of it. And then deer hasn't been messed up too bad, but I'm definitely seeing less larger bucks. And then I didn't get as much time to do. None of our food plots grew this year because they just didn't get enough water. So that really messed
Yeah.
things up there.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. Similar boat down here in Texas too. So, um, so as far as you have whitetail and mule deer on the place, I'm assuming.
Yep, we have a mix of both. And then as for tags, there's like a couple different options, but there's a way to get archery, there's sex for any deer. Then there's you can get a whitetail tag where it's any sex. Yeah, I mean either sex, but it's good for like a really long time through multiple seasons. Because like generally in Colorado, most tags you get are good for like archery, muzzleloader, or rifle. They're not good for all of them. Whereas there's this one special whitetail tag. There's a either sex version and a doe only version that are good through all the seasons. So you get like 3 months to hunt every year. So it's a good fallback, and I can usually draw that as a second choice. But man, muleys are so much more fun.
Oh yeah. So with all this wheat production, and then you mentioned food plots being a part of that as well, as far as when it comes to hunting, what tactically normally comes into play when you're trying to hunt deer, whitetail and or mule deer, utilizing either the wheat fields that are existing versus your food plots, and what on top of that, what do those food plots look like normally?
Yeah, so the food plots are sorghum is usually what we plant. So it's a cane. When it grows, it grows 6, 8, 9 foot high. Has like little berry looking things on the end in a paintbrush looking style. So that's mainly more for the pheasants anyways, but like we have a lot of tree rows that are along fence rows and stuff. So that's mainly where we're deer hunting. And then of course in our CRP fields too.
Yeah.
So CRP is a mix of wild grasses, and it's anywhere from knee to waist high, give or take, depending on exactly what bush you're stepping over or whatever. But that's where most of our deer hunting is. The mule deer all kind of hang out in one area, at least most of the time. That's where me and my brother both killed the biggest bucks that we've each killed there. And I mean, if I had to shoot a deer, that's where I'd go first morning every time. I wouldn't even bother looking anywhere else first. But,
Yeah.
In one set of trees on one edge of a CRP field.
Gotcha. So, what are some of the highlighted hunts or whitetails, muleys that you guys have taken off over the years?
So the all time is my brother's 2018 buck, and it was, I want to say he netted like 158, but his gross was like 195.
Wow.
I mean, he was insane. I should have brought the paperwork, but it's at the farm. So all of our deer are hanging at the farm. So that one is just amazingly special and just huge. It's kind of a one-off. He got super lucky on the shot. He hit it basically right below the antler in the back of the head when it was running away from him. He didn't even know he hit it because it took him a long time to find it.
Wow.
And so that was a pretty crazy phone call that I got, and pictures when I started getting them. I was like, what? I wasn't out there that weekend, unfortunately. I was doing something with family, but I didn't have a tag, so we kind of leave when whoever has the tags kind of gets run of the place, and just leave it that way so we don't bump into each other, get in the way. And
yeah,
like that. Let's see, in 2022, my dad, or I guess 2021, my dad had a any buck tag, and he finally shot his first deer. He shot a little, basically fork mule deer, but he had never shot a deer before, just because of like back when he was a kid, there weren't really any deer at the farm at all. No whitetails or muleys or anything. So it's been a huge transition to where now, like I said, we can get a tag every year. It's a matter of what the tag's good for and whatever. So
right. So you just said that there weren't any deer, or hardly any, when he was growing up. So is the wheat production really what y'all have to credit to there now being huntable deer?
No, it's definitely the CRP.
CRP.
So yeah, those wild grasses have made a huge difference. And I mean, like I said, that's where all the deer are. We have one field that we actually lease to the state every year. NCRP is 320 acres, and we just don't usually get around to hunting it, so we lease it through a walk-in program where it goes into, where basically anybody who wants to hunt it can, and it's open for one price that you get paid. You get the landowner can put it in for just small game, where they can make a little extra money if they put it in for big game. My dad usually puts that in, but there's always like a huge herd of whitetail does in that field, and it's right off a paved road. Like it's 320 acres right off the paved road. And there's always but yeah, that CRP is definitely the difference, and it's just been life changing for everything.
Yeah, That sounds like for sure. So typically rifle hunting or bow hunting, mixture of both. What do you guys find
So
yourselves
everybody
doing
with
out
me
there?
is rifle only, for sure. So it's just easier. Your shot, like most of my shots I've taken have been under 60, so it's not like that far. The big buck I got in 2020. Remember that big one I got that was all palmy? I think that was 2021.
2021, I believe.
He,
Yeah.
yeah, I think he was for like 220, but otherwise all the other bucks I've shot out there have been under 60. And so it's just kind of a matter. The mule deer especially will just kind of hang out, so you can get in pretty close. And as long as you like don't jump them, they'll just kind of wait for 10 seconds before they leave. So you got time to set up and take a pretty close shot. And you're hunting, like I said, you're hunting tree rows. So there's 3 trees in a side row horizontally down that are all head way above your head, probably 12, 15 feet high. And so you have like a narrow window, but it's like, if as long as it gets up in there and just stands there, which they usually do, you can just shoot them and not worry about it. And even with a bow, it'd be the same kind of thing as long as you were pretty quick on your ranging.
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
I just haven't had the chance to take an animal with a bow just because the whitetails usually don't hang out. So I've tried to spot and stalk them quite a few times just because I don't have any tree stands. I do have one ground bind, but I haven't played with it enough and knowing how it all works. When like rifle hunting, I have not filled a tag in within 1 day of the season being open.
Wow.
Or 1 day of me starting hunting with a rifle. So it's also like I could spend a whole month trying to bow hunt, or I can just invest 1 or 2 days and be fine with rifle time. So the wife always wants me to do that one.
Yeah, I got you there for sure. So you also mentioned pheasants at the beginning, and I know for the past couple seasons, last season ended up not being a good hunt out there, or a good turnout for a hunt, I should say. And then this year, you're a little concerned coming up about weather, but you always offer it up to our fall obsession team to be able to come out there and join you for pheasants normally in early every year. So what does that look like out there as far as your pheasant hunting opportunities and how all that goes down?
Yeah, so it's been really good. Minus, like I said, the last couple of years it's not been so great just because of the drought. But we basically walk wheat stubble fields, and so we use a special kind of header when we harvest wheat called a stripper header. So normally the headers are the big wheels with blades on the bottom that kind of move like this. And so these stripper headers instead are actually basically like, easiest way to explain it is they're like spinning spoons. So they like scoop off the wheat and then they leave a lot more stubble. So like the old school normal headers probably leave stubble that's like ankle high, maybe just above the ankle, where ours will leave knee high everywhere as long as your wheat's that tall. It just takes off the very end. So obviously it's a lot better place for the pheasants to live, and deer like it too. They'll bed down in there and you won't be able to see them. But that's been a huge difference too in our pheasant population, is that we've been able to do that. Yeah. We also hunt them in the fence rows and the trees, and then CRP too. There's several CRP fields where we really have a good time.
Gotcha. I've never experienced pheasant hunting, so I'm always curious with some of the upland game mentalities and concepts. So
yeah, we'll have to get you up here so you can try it out.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff on my list, man. More than unfortunately more than I can cover in a season with young kids and everything. So
yeah, so I will get you up in the fall for a deer hunt, and then we can do it at the same time, because it's a season for pheasants basically like mid-November through the end of January. So as long as you have a later deer tag, or you come later in the archery season, you can do it at the same time.
Gotcha. Cool deal. So as far as this year, what were you able to do any hunting opportunities? Because I know we've mentioned your buck from 2021. That was an absolute stud. I know we recorded a podcast on that. The episode number specifically slips my mind, but it was in that fall of 2021, I know. So listeners can go back and find that episode, the Colorado Whitetail or something, I think is what we titled it. But
yeah, something like that. It would have been like this late December of that year.
Yeah.
I had told them we had our third daughter born this year, me and my wife. And so we had agreed that I wasn't going to get to hunt any big game. So like how the cycle works for licensing is you put in March, it's due like the first week of April is the latest, and then you find out in June, and then you get to go in the fall, of course. Well, so in March we agreed I'm not going to put in for any tags. I'm just going to get points. So this year I spent not a ton of money, but 60, $70 on points. And then I started to accrue mountain goat points. That was another $50 in May, because every time you get a point for them, you got to pay for money. And 50 as a non-resident, 100 if you're. 50 as a resident, 100 if you're non-resident. So those get expensive. But
Yeah.
so then the fall came around, and we had scheduled to go out to my grandparents. My grandparents live at the farm, so we go see them with my new daughter in September, because she was born in August. And like Tuesday before the week we were going to go on my trail on my spike point, I get a picture of this giant bull elk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so and there are elk tags out there, and it's like over the counter, no limits. If you want to buy 50 of them, you can buy 50 of them. You just got to pay the money.
Wow.
Season's good with any rifle, muzzleloader, bow. Season's good from October 1st to January 31st. It's like an insane season. So just the Parks and Wildlife doesn't want them out there because they don't want to pay crop damage on cornfields, because that's what'll happen. Well, I think what had happened to get him to move there is Nebraska had a similar problem where they're paying out a ton of crop damage in a county, like not the county next to us, but one over in Nebraska. And in July, they put out a huge hunt, like basically the same kind of deal. No restrictions on number of tags you buy, but they made like non-resident tags $10 and resident tags $5. And if you're a landowner, it was like $2. It
Holy
was
cow.
insanely cheap to go by as many who want to go shoot elk. So like their whole elk herd dispersed, and it pissed everybody off because it had been like a 7 or 8 point elk unit in Nebraska,
Wow.
and it was one of the best elk units in Nebraska, and it pretty much ruined the whole unit because of course they were just like going bankrupt from paying all these corn damages.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure from that it just messed that herd up, and this lone bull just kind of we, like I said, it's only about maybe 40 miles. So I'm guessing he just kind of followed down the river to us, and then there's a sand draw that goes from the river to into my farm, and the tracks that we found were going from the corner where my camera was down to, and then the neighbor's part of the sand draw. There was clearly he went there a couple times because his footprints were way better than any of the deer or anything. So, So I did technically hunt for like a day and a half after him, but it was more kind of like driving around and praying we see him, because that's pretty much what it is. And then out there, basically, my grandma can get permission from just about anybody. So I was like, we'll just keep Onyx open. I'll tell you where I'm at. You just call this guy. And that's kind of how it was going to work. But,
Yeah.
So for, half a day, the 2 days we were out there, we looked for him for a bit. But that was really my only hunting this year. But it's kind of more like wishing on a prayer. But it would have been pretty amazing. But yeah, I got two good pictures of him one day. The first one was daytime, so that's why I was so shocked. And I was like, well, I'll go drop my $55 and the very tiny chance he shows up or whatever. So
Yeah. So I take it that's not very common for y'all to see elk out there.
not necessarily near us. Like, so our unit goes up to like right near the highway. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's unit 93 if you look at a unit map. But closer to the highway, they do sometimes get them to come down the river from the mountains, because there's a river that runs all the way down there. So they do see them there occasionally, and there's a bunch of pronghorn right there in the big sand hills and stuff. So you will occasionally have elk down there. I've never seen one. I mean, besides these two pictures, we had never seen one close to us, or
Gotcha.
So we saw one, if you will, but not really. It just camera caught him at the right second. But
Yeah.
they're definitely moving more. And then this year we also saw a lot more pronghorn moving through by us, which was really weird because they have never been by us before. So I don't know if it was just a disruption in where their nose usually are, but we had 2 or 3 herds walk by of 5 or 6 does a couple different times.
Yeah. So kind of on that note a little bit, and transitioning a little bit to another thing we wanted to bring up in this episode. You had mentioned to me, and again, as I alluded to at the beginning, you stay very on top of all of the Colorado draw applications and statistics and that kind of stuff. You're very well educated on that. Tell us about this thing coming up where Colorado's looking to get rid of some over-the-counter tags, or you kind of mentioned that to me in passing before. So
Yeah, so It's kind of up in the air, but they just had one of their meetings where they like release what their plan is and stuff. And one of the things they mentioned was either massive decrease to the number of units and number of tags issued, or getting rid of over-the-counter archery elk altogether. Um, they kind of said it as like a one-off, like really quick comment, didn't take comments on it, so it's kind of weird. But
Huh.
I mean, we'll see more when, like I said, the rule book actually comes out in March. So in about a month, we'll kind of get an idea. They'll have to make public comment on that again because it's already been brought up by every sportsman's group here. Like, what the heck? Like, that's not
Yeah.
kosher. Last year, they did take either 1 or 2 units out of over the counter and put them into draw only for archery. I want to say it was like 84, if I remember right, or somewhere down in that area, down near kind of near Pueblo. But it made that 1 unit went from over the counter to 1 point required for a resident to draw and 2 points for a non-resident to draw, just because everyone thought it was the cool thing because it was new. It'd be way more restrictive, obviously, because then there's a limited number of tags versus the over the counter. It's like you can have a million dudes show up and you just don't know how many dudes there's going to be. Like their area, I usually rifle hunts up in 3, and they have second and third season both have over the counter bulls, and then the cows are the draw. And so they issue 1,000 cow tags between second and third season. And I think they'll probably drop that to, like, I've heard a rumor they're going to drop that to about 850 just because of the wolf population there is actually growing. And then they have to do a forced reintroduction starting next year, 2024, based on some stuff that happened with the voters a couple of years ago. They got required to introduce wolves into parts of Colorado. So that's going to get fun. But so we'll kind of see. But I think there are going to, if you have a lot of points in Colorado, that's probably a good year to use them because you probably have 2 more years of not major effects by new predators, but it's going to get interesting once those start getting here and things going from there.
Interesting. So are there, with a wolf population impacting like that, are they looking at hunting opportunities there or increasing something like that, or not right now?
Well, they'll fall under endangered species list to start with. So obviously it's going to be years and years and years till that'll happen. Wyoming's population is not under endangered species list. And the area I was talking about is like, it literally borders Wyoming. And when I was up there elk hunting in January of 22, so the last like real hunt I went on, because I had that special where I got to go on that private ranch hunt. I think we had a podcast, but I don't think you may remember that. But
yeah.
We saw 2 wolves, me and the 2 other guys up there.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we were about 15, 18 miles from the Wyoming border at that point. So it's like they're already here. It's just a matter of like now that they have to do a forced reintroduction. All the ones that are getting introduced are going to be GPS wired collards, so they'll know if somebody does something they're not supposed to do really easily. So people really need to like think about that as much as they don't want them there. Like you don't want to be that guy because you're going to go to federal prison probably.
Yeah. How does that affect? And you may or may not know, how does that affect farmers?
So it'll depend. I mean, like where my farm is, we won't have anything because they're not going to introduce them there. I know they're having there's a couple towns sort of near where I go, kind of a little more east and a little more north, that are having some major problems with their cattle and their like sheepdogs are getting pretty well, or at least had been getting taken out pretty hard. I know there was a couple reports in the newspaper, like one guy had like 7 sheepdogs killed in a season, which usually he has like maybe 1. So obviously that's an expense for him. And then since there's no he can't get reimbursed for that or anything from the state. Whereas at this point they need to adjust that, I think, and then people will be a little less angry about it. But I think there's some things that need to be done there that I don't think are going to happen. So
yeah, well, that'll all be very, very interesting to see how that plays out. Sounds like some slightly controversial stuff on the table. So
yeah, I'd say it literally passed like 50.5% to 49.5%.
Oh my gosh!
And almost every vote was from 3 counties: Boulder, Denver, and like one other one by me. And there were like there's not a county where it actually will be introduced that had any. It was even like in the majority, even like it was like all those were 75-25 or better.
That's crazy.
So
Golly.
we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting for sure. I mean, they're cool to see. Like, it was absolutely breathtaking to see some, but I don't want to see them every year, tons of them over elk. I want to,
Yeah, I mean
and
they're cool, but at what expense,
yeah,
So yeah,
you say that unit's a 9, where a hunt is a 9-point pronghorn unit. It's going to go up worse than that. It'll be an 11 or 12 point for rifle. That is, for archery, it's still like 6 or 7, because it just has the biggest population and the most. So everyone knows, like, if you actually want to get a pronghorn, it's one of the best places to go.
yeah.
Um, but it's just like, it's not going to be an option. I know by the time I get points, I'm planning on trying to get at 10, but it's not. I think I'm at 5 now, so I got years to go, and
Yeah.
I may have to rethink that and just take a different one and move on.
Yeah. So I know you've explained it on a previous episode. I don't know exactly which one, but your long journey you're in the progress of doing right now, and you actually mentioned it in passing a few moments ago with your mountain goat tag. What again, I know you've talked about before, but explain for us how that all works up there.
So for mountain goat, moose, and bighorn sheep are the big 3 in Colorado that you have to put in and pay extra money. Basically, you put in, once you put in 3 times, you have your preference points, and then each one after that, you get a bonus point. And you have to have your 3 preference points to even put in for a unit, unless there's a really weird circumstance, like there's one moose unit where that's not the case, but you're not going to draw it anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But and then once you have those 3, you start building a secondary point column. And then once you have enough, you can maybe draw it. So for the good units, especially with a rifle, you're looking at like 3 plus 25 or 3 plus 27. So give or take 30. And so I just started the mountain goat climb. So I'm at 1 and 0. So I'll be at 2 and 0 in May. Award them in May. And that's when you have to pay the extra $50 or $100 if you're non-resident. Kind of like how when you draw, you pay for your tag in June, but you put your application fee up front. So like I said, for me, it's like $50-$60 in app fees usually. And then this year it'll be higher just because they do an adjustment based on the cost of living index. And of course, this year is like the worst one we've ever had.
Right.
So turkey tags went up like crazy. So I'm kind of waiting to see what the non-resident, like the other tags go up, but it'll be a big difference for sure.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm guessing mine will be like $65-$70 this year in that point. And then $50 for the mountain goat point in May. And then hopefully in June, I get hit for, an elk tag and a deer tag. And that'll probably be the 2 I draw this year.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. Well, again, like I mentioned, we'll get you back on here in a month or 2 or whenever the time is right to get on here and talk about what the final verdict on all these things going on up there. I know we've done that in a previous couple seasons too, and definitely need to do it again this year for the Colorado annual hunt planning episode, if you will. So
yeah, for sure. Bring a pen and a notebook to that one.
Yeah, it's definitely a very educational episode and one that benefits and is of interest to probably the people who are wanting to go up there. So we'll make sure everybody's well aware of that when the time comes, but it'll be a good one. So
yep.
The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap it up for this week's podcast is Fall Obsession and your role as the Western Regional Coordinator out there, and then coupling that with us wanting to actually get some growth going in our Western region. And for the people who might be a new listener or curious about it, we've divided into 5 different regions as far as where we recognize our pro and field staffers here at Fall Obsession. And a regional coordinator oversees each of those regions. Obviously, Tim being the one in the Western region, which is, I don't know, kind of the Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, or excuse me, not New Mexico line, and west over from there.
And Canada.
And Canada. We're kind of rolling our Canadian staffers into Tim's region as well. But we're wanting to reach people who are out there out there in the West and get them plugged in as Fall Obsession staff members and as content contributors here. So I'll open it up to you to say whatever you'd like to say about it, but all I have to say about it is if y'all are out there out west, come apply. If you
Yeah,
hunt out west frequently, come apply.
yeah, I'd second that. Right now, there's only a couple of them. There's three of us right now, counting our Canadian staffer, who's definitely not in the West, but that's fun. So it's always a fun group there. So yeah, if you're in Canada or the Western U.S., let us know. Come say hey and put an application, or even if you just have questions, we can talk, figure out what's best for you. If you don't think that's what's up, maybe we can find another way to connect you. Like I said, every year we do a pheasant hunt at my farm, so that's one motivating factor to think about it. This fall, I'm working on putting together an elk and mule deer hunt. Next year, we're definitely having one. A lot of people in the Midwest are wanting to go next year, just because of finances for them. So they all know they got to put in this year, get points, so that they can go next year for deer, because the area we're going to go, it takes it one deer point. So I think they're all on board with that at this point, at least from what I've heard from Todd and a few other guys.
Yeah.
So those are the big things there. And then we're going to put other hunts together out west. If you have a cool situation, I know a lot of guys are interested in spring bear. We don't have a spring bear here in Colorado, but I know Idaho and Montana are both kind of on a lot of people's bucket list for that. So I'm sure we'll put one of those together in the next few years.
Yeah. Yeah, come join us. And to give you guys an idea on the field staff program and then the application process, kind of how all that works. Basically, we're looking for content creators that frequent or reside in these areas to not only contribute just cool photos and videos to our pages, but also educational content like educational videos or articles, whatever the case might be. We build our platform and we are able to give our listeners and our viewers relevant content to the areas that they hunt because of our staff members, because of people like Tim or Todd and Tyler over there in the Midwest, whatever the case might be. I'm from Texas, so I can tell you all day long about hunting Texas, but I can't even begin to touch what Tim, for example, is educated on up there in Colorado and kind of those western United States. So just an example of kind of what we're looking for as far as people to be involved, people to contribute. As Tim mentioned, these hunts and specific events, we are, very family oriented. We want to build a tight knit group here of people that get together on a semi regular basis. For whether it's just to hang out and enjoy time together or to hunt. So we try to make those opportunities as frequent as we possibly can. The application process, folks can go to fallobsession.com. That's our website. /staff opportunities. If you forget that, just go to fallobsession.com and there's a button on there that'll take you to that page. From there, it'll explain kind of some more details on how the staff program works. There's a form at the bottom of the page you guys can fill out. That sends a message to our staff manager, Todd Sellen, and from there, he starts the application process, starts you guys getting plugged in. Wherever you guys are local to, he'll bring the regional coordinator like Tim into the loop on your status and everything, and things kind of progress from there. So that's to kind of give you guys an idea on how that process is gonna transpire. So
yeah, and just to echo what he said, I really encourage you putting in. It's an awesome program. I've been here, I think, 4 years now, almost 5 years now.
Yeah, I was going to say quite a while. So yeah,
we've gotten some pretty incredible opportunities on the staff. The biggest one I'm sure we've all talked about a million times was that 2019 deer hunt in Texas, and I think that will probably always be one of my favorite memories, at least until something way better happens staff wise. But that hunt, I mean, that was something extra special that I'll never forget about.
Yeah, that was kind of the one that got it all started. As far as the regions and the coordinators and stuff, it came later, but that was the first official staff hunt that we ever had down here in Texas. I think we had 10 or 12 guys in camp total. You were one of them. You came down from Colorado. Drew and Andy and a bunch of other guys, Nick, were all in camp. And yeah, it was just a fun-filled weekend. And in 3 days or 2.5 days or whatever it was, we killed 30.
Not long.
Yeah, we killed 31 whitetail deer on that management hunt. So it was an absolute blast. You literally had to come back to camp and wait in line for the skinning pole. I mean,
Yep.
So it was a very fun time.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, thanks for joining me this week. I appreciate it. We'll have you back on here very soon, as we've mentioned, for that hunt planning episode. And appreciate you coming on.
Sounds good.
For our listeners, thank you all for listening. If you haven't already, hit that follow and subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Fall Obsession Podcast is on all major podcast platforms, as well as Carbon TV, Waypoint TV, and our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is where you can find the podcast videos as well. FallObsession.com is the website. Go there to find all of our content, explore around on some of that educational stuff and those video series that we have. Pick you up some apparel. We got some tumblers and some decals and stuff online right now that we just launched, so go check those out. Social medias, we're on all the major platforms. Go follow. And Ridge Rock Hunt Company, they are the podcast partner. Derek and Lacey over there in Mississippi, they book hunts for vetted outfitters across the country. So if you're looking to set something up with for that dream hunt you've been saving up for, give Derek a call. He'll work with you on timeline, pricing, licensing, all that good stuff to get you set up in the place that you need to be. Ridge Rock Hunt Company, go check them out. I'll also mention that if you or your brand are interested in advertising here on our podcast, as we just did for Ridge Rock, be sure that you send us an email at info@fallobsession.com, and we got plenty of different advertising opportunities on this podcast that are very affordable and that reach literally thousands of people across North America on a weekly basis. So let us know. Tim, thanks again.
Yep, thanks, Sam.
All right, guys, we're back again next Monday for another episode. I'll catch you then.